They tell you the pressure is the enemy. They tell you the cold will kill you. They lied. The real enemy is the silence. Because down here, the silence isn't empty. It's waiting. I heard the knocking on the outer hull 3 minutes ago. I'm at 14,000 feet. There is nothing outside but death. So why is something asking me to come in? The Orpheus was a coffin made of titanium and reinforced glass, dangling on a tether thin enough to snap like a thread in a storm. My job was simple. Descend to the Mariana Trench floor, retrieve the data module from a seismic sensor that had gone offline, and ascend. A 4-hour drop, 1 hour of work, 4 hours up. Routine. Or so I told myself. I was the pilot, Elias. My co-pilot, Sarah, was managing the robotic arms. The cabin was small, smelling of recycled air and copper. Outside the 3-inch viewport, the ocean had shifted from blue to twilight, and finally to a black so absolute it felt like it was pressing against my eyes. Depth, 8,000 meters, Sarah whispered. We always whispered down here. It felt disrespectful to speak loud in a graveyard this big. Sonar is clear, just the silt and the rocks. I checked the monitors. The green sweep of the radar was rhythmic, hypnotic. Ping, ping, ping. We're approaching the sensor, I said, adjusting the ballast. The lights of the Orpheus cut through the darkness, illuminating the gray, lifeless floor of the trench. It looked like the moon, but wet and crushing. We found the sensor package. It wasn't just offline. It was shredded. Looks like a landslide took it out, Sarah noted, her hands manipulating the joystick to extend the robotic claw. Cables are sheared. But as I looked closer at the high-definition feed, my stomach turned. The cables weren't sheared by rocks. They were frayed, chewed. Elias, Sarah's voice trembled. Look at the sonar. I glanced at the screen. A massive red blotch had appeared at the edge of our range. It wasn't moving. It was just hovering. Glitch? I asked, hoping I was right. It's too big for a glitch. It's the size of a whale. But whales don't swim this deep.
The encounter. Suddenly, the red blotch vanished. Where did it go? Sarah asked, panning the external cameras frantically. Maybe it was thermal interference, I lied. Then came the sound. Thump. It was dull, heavy. It vibrated through the floor of the sub. We both froze. Thump. Thump. It was coming from the roof. Something had landed on us. Systems check, I barked, trying to mask my panic. Is the whole integrity holding? Integrity is 98%, but Elias, the external microphones. She put the audio on the cabin speakers. At first, it was just the hiss of the ocean. Then, we heard it, a low, guttural grinding noise, like wet stones rubbing together. And underneath that sound, something impossible. A voice. Help. Help me. It was faint, distorted, metallic. Sarah grabbed my arm. That sounded like Marcus. Marcus was a diver who had died in an accident in this very trench 4 years ago. His body was never recovered. It's interference, I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. Cold. So cold, Sarah. The voice was clearer now. It wasn't radio. It was acoustic. It was coming from outside the glass. I turned the external floodlights upward, rotating the top camera. The beam cut through the black water.
Resting on top of our hull was a translucent, gelatinous mass. It pulsed with a faint, bioluminescent blue light. It had no eyes, no face, just long, trailing tendrils that were wrapped around our communications antenna. As the light hit it, the creature shifted. It didn't swim, it flowed. It slid down the front of the cockpit, covering the viewport. We were staring into a wall of pale, shifting flesh. "Get it off!" Sarah screamed. "Use the manipulator arm!" I grabbed the controls, swinging the robotic arm around to scrape the thing off the glass. As the metal claw touched the creature, the entity reacted instantly. It turned bright, angry red. The cabin speakers erupted with a screeching noise, a digital scream that made my ears pop. The creature wasn't just making noise, it was hacking the audio feed. Then, the face formed. Pressed against the glass, the gelatinous flesh molded itself. It mimicked the shape of a human face. It wasn't Marcus. It was me. It was my face, screaming in silence, pressed against the glass, staring back at me with dead white eyes. "It's learning," I whispered, paralyzed. "It's reading us." The sub groaned. The pressure hull creaked violently. "Elias, we're descending," Sarah yelled. I looked at the altimeter. We weren't buoyant anymore. The creature was heavy, incredibly heavy. We were sinking past the safe limit. 11,000 meters. 11,200 meters. "Drop the ballast weights," I shouted. "I can't. The release mechanism is jammed. It's holding the weights in." The creature had wrapped its tendrils around the manual release levers on the outside. It wanted to take us down into the crushing dark where even the Orpheus would crumple like a soda can. The glass of the viewport gave a sharp crack. A hairline fracture appeared right in the center of the creature's mimicked eye. Water began to spray in, a fine, high-pressure mist that cut like a razor. "We're going to die," Sarah sobbed. I looked at the creature. It was mocking us. It shifted again, forming Sarah's face now, mouthing the words, "Open the door." I had one option: the emergency electrical purge. It would send a massive voltage shock through the hull skin. It would fry the sub's electronics, kill our lights, kill our heat, and maybe kill our oxygen scrubbers. But it might shock the thing off. "Hold on to something insulated," I roared. I slammed my hand down on the purge button. The sound was deafening. Sparks showered from the console. The smell of ozone filled the tiny sphere. The lights died instantly. We were plunged into absolute, suffocating darkness. Silence returned. "Sarah?" I whispered. "I'm here," she choked out. We waited. The thump was gone. The weight was gone. Slowly, the emergency red lighting flickered on. I checked the depth gauge. We were rising. The shock had triggered the fail-safe ballast drop. We were shooting toward the surface. I looked out the viewport. The creature was gone. There was only the black water rushing past. We sat in silence for 2 hours as we ascended. We didn't speak. We didn't celebrate. We just watched the black turn to blue. When we breached the surface,
the recovery team cracked the hatch. The fresh air smelled sweet, but I felt sick. As they pulled us out onto the deck of the mothership, the captain ran over. "Thank God," he said. "We lost comms for 3 hours. What happened down there?" I opened my mouth to explain, to tell him about the mimic, the face, the weight. But then I saw the side of the submarine. The crew was backing away, horror on their faces. I walked over to the side of the Orpheus. Etched into the titanium hull, scratched deep into the metal as if by diamond-hard claws, was a message. It wasn't random scratches. It was precise, jagged handwriting. It read, "Do not come back. We are full." I looked at Sarah. She wasn't looking at the writing. She was looking at her arm. There was a small red welt where she had leaned against the cold wall of the subden during the attack. The welt moved. Underneath her skin, something small and bioluminescent shifted, crawling up toward her neck. She looked at me, her eyes wide, and she smiled. But it wasn't her smile. It was the smile from the bottom of the trench.
Sarah collapsed on the deck moments later. The doctors said it was decompression sickness, but last night I visited her in the infirmary. She was asleep, but her mouth was moving. I leaned in close to listen. She wasn't breathing air. She was making a sound, like crushing water and snapping bone. And then, without opening her eyes, she whispered, "The pressure is perfect here."
This narrative is based on the final log entry of the DSV Orpheus. The log was recovered, but the submarine and its 2 pilots vanished from the ship's infirmary 3 days later. No bodies were found, only a trail of seawater leading to the railing. The ocean is deep, but the darkest things, they come to the surface eventually.
You've seen their stories, but the darkness has only just begun.